bobqc.net.
Hi readers, time for chapter 12 of the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. And a reminder that if you would like this book, hardback, all highlighted by me, all the things that I turned into questions and answers on the very pages that they're on, email me, lisa@bobqc.net, and say, I would really like to have that book. And let me know your address or whatever address you would like me to send the book to, and I will send it to you. Whoever's the first person to ask for the book, that's who's going to get the book. Okay, here we go, chapter 12. The next morning, Teo was so sore he could barely get out of bed. Every muscle in his upper body, from his shoulders to his wings, and even down to his fingers, ached and screamed in protest as he showered and changed into his uniform. The worst part was that Aurelio had been right, but Teo would rather suffer than let him know it. It took all of his concentration not to wince and let on how much pain he was in, but it didn't matter because Aurelio didn't pay him any attention during breakfast. None of the Golds did, in fact. They talked among themselves, predicting with genuine excitement what terrible thing was awaiting them at the next trial. Teo, Shio, and Naya were back to being background noise, just like Aristella had said. While Shio and Naya talked, Teo could barely pay attention. He was too distracted, trying to catch Aurelio's eye. Usually Aurelio at least glanced in his direction, but not today. It was almost like he was purposefully not looking at Teo, probably just to piss Teo off. It took a lot of restraint for Teo not to slam his fist on the table and make Aurelio look at him. He eats a banana like a serial killer, Teo grumbled to his friends as he watched Aurelio slice up one and eat the pieces with a fork. Don't you think? He turned to Naya to find her biting into a stack of pancakes like a hamburger. She blinked at him. What? She asked through a mouthful of pancakes. I'm carbo-loading. Teo sighed and shook his head. Shio dissolved into a fit of laughter and immediately choked on the guava juice he was drinking, spraying it out of his nose and onto the table. Oh my gods, I need new friends, Teo announced as he grabbed a stack of napkins and handed them to Shio. Look, I don't know why you're staring at Aurelio so hard, but it's making me uncomfortable, Naya said, shoving Teo's shoulder as Shio mopped up his mess. Shh, Teo hissed, shoving her back, which did nothing. I'm not staring. He was, but he didn't need her drawing attention to it. You're definitely staring, Shio confirmed, nodding. Ogling even, it's creepy, Teo. Naya squinted suspiciously at him. Are you trying to undress him with your eyes or what? Shut up, Teo barked, which made everyone look at him, except for Aurelio, which just made his not looking more suspicious. Aristella leaned forward to give him a dirty look. Embarrassed, Teo slid down in his seat and scrubbed his hands over his face. I'm glaring at him with disdain. I'm not ogling, he said, much quieter this time, but he knew he wasn't convincing anyone after that display. Naya laughed. Shio, at least, had the decency to try to cover his chuckle with a cough. Teo groaned, but when he looked up at Aurelio again, he could have sworn he saw Aurelio glance away, the corners of his lips twitching up. Your clothes for today are already waiting for you to change into, Luna announced as the soul priests cleared away breakfast. Change? Teo asked again. Luna stopped and shot Teo a look. He snapped his mouth shut. As she spoke, her signs were sharp and emphatic. Diose Tierra has kindly arranged for you all to spend the day at the La Cumbre hot springs. An excited ripple ran down the table. I highlighted that Diose Tierra, who is the host of this trial, arranged for them to go and spend the day relaxing and having fun at the hot springs, La Cumbre hot springs, which is La Cumbre was the volcano. That's why there's the hot springs there. An excited ripple ran down the table. Yes, Teo hissed under his breath. His mood instantly improved. Finally, he'd be able to see what a real gold city was like. Before welcoming us to his temple tonight for dinner, Luna continued, and I won't have you all running around in your training attire. Her dark gaze swept across all the competitors. I expect everyone to be respectful and courteous while we are there. I will not accept anything less. Is that understood? Everyone nodded and mumbled their agreement. Luna gave a curt nod. Good. Now, go. You have 1 hour before we leave for the hot springs. Naya immediately leapt to her feet and sprinted back inside. What do you think they're going to make us wear? Shio wondered with a look of dread. Can't be any worse than these uniforms, Teo said. It wasn't worse, but the La Cumbre outfit presented its own set of challenges. Teo's tight athletic wear had been swapped out for soft white cotton. The sleeveless tunic was nice in the warm weather, and Teo's wings fit seamlessly through the slits on the back, but the bottoms were the bigger issue. Teo had never worn a hip cloth before. So I'm highlighting that. Teo had never worn a hip cloth before. They were traditional in a few cities, but Quetzalán wasn't one of them. The best he could manage was wrapping it around his waist like a towel. When Naya met Teo in his room, she laughed and snatched it off him, leaving him in his boxer briefs before she tied it the correct way. All the competitors wore the same white cotton garments with their glyph embroidered onto the upper left chest. They were also given a selection of swimwear and a white drawstring backpack to carry it in. As they filed off the boat, Teo self-consciously tugged at the hem of his hip cloth. I'm paranoid I'm going to accidentally flash someone, he grumbled. Another issue was the complete lack of shoes. He knew Naya never wore them, but he thought that was just a Naya thing, not a La Cumbre thing. That's a highlight, okay? Naya never wears shoes, but he just thought that was her preference, but it's really like a thing that all the people in her hometown do. They don't wear shoes, and you're going to find out why. Naya waved off his worries. I doubt anyone would notice, she said, dressed in an outfit nearly identical to the regalia she had worn in the opening ceremony, minus the ornamentals. People walk around half naked and full naked all the time. Teo and Shio exchanged looks, too shocked to ask why. A lot of his questions were answered as they headed up the main road. It kind of tickles, Shio said with an amused smile as he wiggled his toes in the soft, almost ashy dirt. Under the breezy white tunic, Teo could see Shio was wearing a white binder. It makes us feel more connected to the earth and La Cumbre, Naya explained. She talks a lot, so feeling her rumbles through the soles of our feet keeps us connected. Naya spoke of the volcano affectionately. Okay, so that's why they all walk around barefoot in La Cumbre, because they want to feel connected to the earth and the volcano. The name of it is La Cumbre, and when it's rumbling, they can feel it through the soles of their feet. And I highlighted that. Naya spoke of the volcano affectionately, like the people in Quetzal spoke of their bird companions. It made Teo smile. So, of course, Aristella had to ruin it. Gross, she scoffed. Ever since they stepped foot off the boat, she'd had a mildly disgusted look on her otherwise pretty face. No one asked you, Naya snapped. I like it, Teo said, completely ignoring Aristella. Aristella rolled her eyes and turned away, her high ponytail whipping. Teo was worried they'd have to walk up the huge mountain to get to the temple, but luckily Luna led them to an aerial tram station. Highlighting that this is how they're getting up the volcano to the top, where the hot springs are up there, and then all the way to the top is the temple of La Cumbre. They were loaded onto what looked like a silver beam with glass windows on all sides. When it lifted into the air, Teo white-knuckled the railing as it ascended up the cables. Seeing La Cumbre from above was even more incredible. As they made their journey, everyone pressed close to the glass, and Naya pointed out the landmarks below. Dozens of crystal blue mineral baths and hot springs cascaded over the mountainside. Grottos housed altars and steaming pools of blue water. As they neared the top, the strange smell of rotten eggs tickled Teo's nose. What's that stink? Aristella asked, crinkling her nose. Desi nudged Marino. Marino shoved him back. It wasn't me. Desi laughed. It's sulfur, Naya told Teo, pointing as they went over another ridge and a caldera came into view. Everything is warmed by the geothermal heat of La Cumbre. As the tram crossed the crater, Teo could see volcanic vents spewing yellow sulfurous fumes. Before the tram dipped down, he was able to get a glimpse of Tierra's temple. Unlike Quetzal's simple slab of jade, this altar was a huge chunk of gold carved with 3 mountains and rising sun of the Dioses glyph. They were greeted by more crowds as soon as they stepped off the tram. People waved and cheered, snapping pictures as the competitors were led down the path to the hot springs. Tierra priests lined the way, politely holding the spectators back. Everyone clamored for Naya's attention, which was sweet, especially since it seemed to annoy Aristella and Ocello to no end. So it seems that every time they go to a different place for a trial, whichever hometown hero that was from it, those are the people that are like most excited to see the person, is the one who came from there. So Naya is from La Cumbre, so everybody's like, Naya, yeah. Okay. The entire hot spring, including the hotel and pool, was carved into the side of the volcano. The buildings were all made of the same soft beige stone they walked upon. Inside the lobby, the floor had been polished until it sparkled. Loads of plush seating added to the atmosphere of comfort and luxury. Where is everyone? Teo asked as priests led them to the changing rooms. Naya frowned at him. What do you mean? Isn't this place, really popular? He asked, gesturing around. His voice echoed through the empty halls. Aside from the priests escorting them, the lobby and cafe were completely empty. Where are all the people? Oh, you mean mortals? Naya laughed and waved him off. They always close down places to the public when we visit. Teo frowned. All the time? Naya gave him an unsure smile. Yeah. Why? She blinked, like she didn't understand. I don't know. She shrugged. Just how it is. So this is an important point that comes up later in the story. The fact that the golds and mortals, just regular humans, do not socialize. They do not come into contact with each other at all. And so later on in the story, you're going to see that Teo and Shio are natural and feel comfortable around humans, while the golds are freaked out because they never cross paths. Yay. It was a weird concept. The gold semidioses seemed to live completely separately from the mortals they protected. Teo wondered if it was because they were famous or because of their half-gold status. The answer was probably both. Teo couldn't relate in the slightest. There was no such separation between jades and mortals. Teo went to school, went grocery shopping, even went to the movies among the mortal citizens of Quetzalon. The detachment between golds and the mortals they devoted their lives to protecting seemed unnecessary and a bit backward. I think it seemed snooty. They entered the locker rooms and changed into matching bathing suits, which were all white. Unfortunately, the swim bottoms were also hip cloths, but smaller and made out of more water-friendly material. Teo opted to go bare-chested, but Shio went with an oversized tunic. The other option was a bandeau top. When Teo and Shio stepped out into the main area of the hot springs, Teo couldn't believe how fancy and beautiful everything was. The view from the tram really couldn't do it justice. Built into the side of the volcano were at least a dozen tiered pools filled with steaming turquoise water. Lush canopies protected them from the harsh sun, and waterfalls tumbled down the rocky cliffs and fed into the hot springs. This place is really fancy, Shio said, large eyes taking everything in. Yeah, Teo agreed, unable to keep himself from grinning. Maybe he didn't agree with all the special attention Golds got, but he also wasn't going to turn it down while he had it. The closest thing we've got to a spa in Quetzalon is this guy Rico, who hangs around outside the market and will pay you $5 to let him rub your feet. That's weird. Shio let out a startled laugh. Before Teo could even put his stuff down, he heard Marino whoop. Teo turned to watch as Marino sprinted forward and cannonballed into one of the pools. Naya took off after him, landing with an impossibly bigger splash. Teo and Shio grabbed glasses of ice-cold mango juice from a table laden with drinks, fresh fruit, and nuts as everyone else filed out of the locker rooms. "Oh man, you know where they have the best mango juice?" Teo asked, just as Aristella and Aurelio stepped into view. Teo's brain stuttered to a stop. It wasn't like he hadn't seen their skin before. The twins' uniforms were basically fancy crop tops, but Aurelio was entirely shirtless now, standing there like some actual god. Aurelio reached up and adjusted the knot of his hair, sunlight glistening on his warm brown skin. Had someone oiled him up? How the hell did he get those side abs on his ribs? Teo? He jumped, mango juice sloshing in his hand as he quickly turned back to Shio. "What? Where's the best mango juice?" Shio repeated. "Oh, Teo cleared his throat. The younger boy squinted at him. Teo couldn't remember what the hell he'd even been talking about. I don't remember." Shio glanced to where Aurelio and Aristella had entered a pool surrounded by warning signs. Danger, extremely hot. Maybe they could handle water as long as it was boiling. He arched an eyebrow. Uh-huh. Teo shoved him. "Shut up and pick a hot spring." They decided on one of the mineral-rich pools. With the help of his water-repellent wings, Teo could float on his back without even trying. That's a highlight. Teo can float on the water because his wings, like ducks, they're water-repellent, so he can just lay there and float without having to try. Naya set up camp at the food table while Desi and Soshi lounged in a mineral bath with mud masks on their faces. Otzi and Marino kept going underwater to see who could hold their breath the longest, and Ocello dozed off on a lounge chair in a puddle of sunshine. Naya brought Teo and Shio over to a waterfall. When they stood under it, the water thundered over their heads, swallowing up their laughter as it hammered on their backs. The pounding warmth was amazing on his sore wings. Teo suggested they play a game where the person who was it had to close their eyes and listen for the others in order to tag them. It's like Marco Polo. Shio was really good at it and somehow managed to sneak around in the water without being heard, but Naya was way too loud and splashy and kept getting caught. On her third time being it, Teo noticed Aurelio and Aristella had only spent a few minutes in the hottest pool before Aristella left to take selfies against the gorgeous scenery. Alone for once, Aurelio disappeared into what looked like a cave cut into the side of the mountain, shielded by a trickling waterfall. While Naya splashed around with her eyes closed and Shio followed her around, silently laughing, Teo took the opportunity to sneak off after Aurelio. Cold water tickled his back as he stepped through, only to be hit with a wave of heat. The inside was a small grotto with lush ferns growing out of the cracks in the craggy walls. There was a pit of black stones in the middle of the floors, billowing with steam, making the air hot and humid. Aurelio sat on a bench that had been carved into the stone wall of the makeshift sauna. Blue sunlight filtering in through the waterfall and red firelight from the torches danced across Aurelio's skin. His eyes were closed, head tilted back in a way that made Teo think he might be asleep. Teo stepped forward, and one of Aurelio's coppery eyes peeked open. "Mind if I take a seat?" Teo asked, pointing to the bench. Aurelio shook his head and sat up a bit straighter. Teo confidently walked over and took a seat, a safe distance away, his wings tucked behind his back. Aurelio leaned forward and picked up a large ladle from a bucket of water. He poured a spoonful over the hot stones, sending a fresh wave of steam into the air. So it's like a sauna that you would find at a gym, but this one's a natural one. So all the steam and the hot water and everything is from the volcano. If you go to a gym that has saunas, there's dry saunas and steam saunas, which I love steam saunas because especially sometimes they put eucalyptus and it's just, it feels really good. And there's also hot saunas, dry, and people pour water on rocks and then I don't know. I guess it makes some steam in there too. But anyway, saunas feel pretty good, especially after you've exercised. Okay. It was way too hot. Teo didn't know how Aurelio could stand it. He was just sitting there, all peaceful and relaxed, while sweat beaded on his bare thighs and chest, a small trickle running down. You okay? Teo jolted. Yes, I'm fine. He lied, sweat trickling down the back of his neck. A crease formed on Aurelio's brow. You look a little red. Yeah, well, it's hot in here, he replied. The truth was he was sweltering, and the steam in the air was so thick he felt like he couldn't take a proper breath. But it wasn't like he could leave now. I'm relaxing, he added, stretching his arms and wings out for emphasis. He wasn't used to having his wings out and had no real perception of how wide they were, so when he did, his feathers touched Aurelio's shoulder. The other boy's eyes darted to where they'd brushed his skin. Teo quickly retracted them again, choking on an apology he refused to give. You sure you're not too hot? Aurelio asked again. Teo rolled his eyes, secretly wishing he could fan himself off right now. What are you, my mom? Has anyone ever told you you're very stubborn? Pretty much daily. Waymack always says I'll stubborn myself to death. This is a highlight. It's like Teo's most pronounced personality trait is that he is stubborn. Never gives up, which is a good thing. It's often a good thing. Sometimes being stubborn is kind of irritating and maybe is not a good thing, but I think the persistence usually pays off. I'm starting to think he's right. Aurelio leaned down and picked up a water bottle. Here, he said, handing it over. For a moment, Teo hesitated. Aurelio sighed and blinked slowly at him. Teo huffed. Fine. He snatched the bottle from Aurelio's hand. But not because I'm overheated. Right. I'm a normal amount of thirsty. Aurelio nodded. Sure. Teo felt his cheeks grow impossibly warmer. Thirsty as in like hydrated, not... He sputtered, trying to regain some semblance of composure. You know being thirsty means you're dehydrated, right? Aurelio still didn't know how to keep up a joke. At least that was one thing that hadn't changed since they were kids. He opened his mouth, ready with a snappy comeback to tease him when... What would you do? Aurelio suddenly asked, if you were Sunbearer. Teo let out an explosive laugh, more out of surprise than humor. I honestly haven't even considered it, dude. Not like it's a real possibility. It is. Soul didn't just choose you to be killed, Teo guessed, by one of the real contenders. Aurelio took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what you said. Teo really didn't want to talk about this anymore, and something in his face must have made Aurelio realize that. His mouth snapped shut. Awkward silence fell between the two of them. Teo felt like a fool for even following Aurelio here in the first place. What had he been expecting? Maybe to get a glimpse of the Aurelio he'd seen the other night? The Aurelio that didn't seem so untouchable? I think I'm done with the sauna, Teo said, getting up onto his very wobbly legs, but not because it's too hot. An amused look danced across Aurelio's face. Are you sure? Because you look pretty hot. Teo tripped on his way across the cave. Thanks, he yelped. Thanks? What was wrong with him? Teo stepped through the waterfall and was immediately relieved by the fresh air on his sweltering skin. When he saw Naya and Shio standing there staring at him, he skidded to a halt. Hey there. Shio greeted him with a smile that was far from innocent. Teo squeezed the water bottle in his hands. Hi. We were wondering where you went, Shio said, arms crossed over his chest. I was just, he jerked his head toward the grotto. You know, checking stuff out. I'm sure you were, Naya said, shaking her head. What's that supposed to mean? No fraternizing with the enemy, Teo, Shio teased. I wasn't. Two bros chilling in a sauna, 5 feet apart, because they're not, Naya sang, but Teo twisted off the cap of the bottle and splashed the cool water in her face. Naya gasped, mouth hanging open. The look on her face made Teo burst out laughing. Oh, you think that's funny? Naya demanded, charging toward him. No, don't! Teo tried to run, but it was too late. Naya grabbed him and tossed him into one of the pools like a rag doll before diving in after him. Teo, still laughing, choked on water as he used his wings to push huge waves at his best friend. Try not to drown each other, Shio called from the edge of the pool. After they showered and changed back into their clothes, it was a short walk to the La Cumbre temple. Okay, this part's going to be highlighted coming up here. It sat at the highest point of the volcano on the opposite side of the caldera from the spa. The temple itself was made of reddish clay. The only pop of color was a basin made of raw amethyst crystals that cradled the La Cumbre sunstone. Its beam shone steadily into the dust-colored sky. So remember, every city has a sunstone, and the sunstone is somewhere in the city's temple. Okay. There were gold accents, mostly around the windows and main outer steps that led to the altar up top. But other than that, the temple was quite plain compared to what Teo had expected from a gold city. Tierra priests in earth-brown robes welcomed them as they approached. What do you think? Naya asked, tugging on Teo's arm as they walked through the courtyard. It was simple as well, with a couple of cloudy blue hot springs surrounding a golden statue of Tierra. It's awesome, Teo said, not wanting to hurt her feelings, but it was also a little stinky, Shio added, not unkindly, just an observation. I know, Naya practically shouted as she looked around her home. Isn't it great? Teo found himself grinning. He knew she didn't get to go home very often because of her training. He'd probably be more fond of Quetzalon if he was stuck at the academy all the time, too, though he was quickly getting acquainted with the previously foreign feeling of homesickness. I thought it'd be more elaborate, Teo admitted. Wait till you see inside, Naya said with a smirk. Before he could ask what she meant, they were ushered into the temple, and it became abundantly clear. Again, this is highlighted. Inside, the Tierra's temple was like a geode. While the outside of the temple was plain, the inside had tall, cavernous ceilings, and every surface was covered in gemstones. Blazing fire opals, red jasper, and crystals in every color imaginable jutted out from the walls in jagged, irregular angles and glittered in the torchlight. The kaleidoscopic colors and sheer size of the gemstones were dizzying. Teo would have liked to wander the hall, but the sharp look Luna gave him when he drifted toward another corridor kept him in line. They were brought into a dining hall where a large stone table was set for them. Massive, honey-colored citrine crystals, bigger than Teo, hung from the tall ceiling like a chandelier. 4 people stood at the head of the table to greet them. Dressed in his usual suit and golden mask, Diose Tierra lifted a gloved hand in greeting. So that's the Dios of this city, La Cumbre. It's Diose Tierra, and he wears a suit and a golden mask, and he is Naya's father. The earth god was tall, but his slender frame made him seem small compared to the bulky men at his sides. Monte and Mino were dressed in matching white hipcloths and tunics. An older man, Teo had not met before, stood at Tierra's side. His brown hair was graying at the temples, and he was built like a mountain. When he smiled, it was identical to Naya and her brothers, pressing deep lines into his face and crinkling the skin around his eyes. Dad! Naya sprinted forward, breaking formation to throw herself onto her mortal father. She's got 2 fathers. One is the god, Diose Tierra, and the other one is a mortal man. They'll say something about that. I know it's weird. Chuckling, he wrapped his eyes around Naya in a tight hug as he picked her up and spun her around. Gods weren't limited to mortal means of reproduction or childbirth. So, having 2 biological fathers wasn't uncommon among demigods. So that explains how Naya could have 2 dads, a Dios and a mortal man. Tierra, Andres, thank you for having us, Luna said, smiling as she approached. Andres wrapped his arm around Tierra and pulled the god closer to plant a kiss on his cheek. If Tierra had skin, Teo guessed, he would have been blushing. Teo lingered toward the back of the group, suddenly feeling a bit out of place. The weight in Teo's stomach was heavy enough to pull him toward the back of the group. Among the gods and demigods, his mom was all the blood family he had, and that was enough. But seeing Naya at home with her family made Teo painfully aware of how different they were. "We're so thrilled to have you," Andres announced, welcoming the rest of the group. He had a deep, booming voice that echoed in the large room. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the open chairs. "We've got quite the spread. The priests have really outdone themselves." Teo moved to take a seat at the far end of the table. Shio right on his heels like a shadow, but Naya grabbed their arms. Everyone stared as she dragged them to chairs next to hers near the head by her dad and brothers. Two jades sitting among some of the most powerful golds in Reino del Sol. Warmth flooded Teo's body, and he couldn't hold back a smile. As they fell into easy conversation, Tierra priests started bringing out food and drinks for dinner. They drank from clay jarritos, and the plates were made of polished agate. There were roasted root vegetables in more colors than Teo had even knew existed. Andres explained that the steak had been vacuum sealed and cooked in the hot springs until it was soft as butter, falling apart as soon as Teo stuck his fork in it. He avoided the chicken, but helped himself to fish that had been grilled in the kitchens using La Cumbre's geothermal heat. You know why Teo's avoiding eating chicken, right? Because Teo's a bird. Teo's companions of all the people in Quetzalán, where he lives with his mother, Diose Quetzalán, they're all bird related, so he does not want to be eating chicken. Even the rebocado had been slow cooked underground in clay pots. "Eat up," Andres instructed when everyone seemed hesitant to start. "You need protein for your next trial tomorrow." Desi turned to Luna and signed something. "The second trial will be hosted by Diosa Fauna." Luna explained and signed back. "We'll leave for El Valle when we board the boat tonight and should arrive by midday." Okay, so second trial in El Valle, where Diosa Fauna is the one in charge there and the host of the next trial. Immediately, the group broke out into an excited chatter. Teo didn't eat much after that. The later it got, the more his stomach churned and a tightness settled into his chest. When it was time to leave, Naya and her family exchanged back-breaking hugs. Teo was ready to console his friend, but instead of being sad, the time with her family seemed to have given her a burst of renewed energy. Everyone's hypothesizing didn't stop when they left the temple and rode the tram back down the mountain. At night, the zigzagging paths of the city down below were illuminated by torches. "Sleep tight, La Cumbre," Naya shouted back up the mountain as they approached the docks. Teo could have sworn he felt the volcano rumble under his feet in response. Okay, that's chapter 12. And I'm pretty sure that this next chapter, chapter 13, will be the second trial that's happening in El Valle, hosted by Diosa Fauna. Okay. Remember, email me if you want the book, lisa@bobqc.net, and keep reading.
You read the books, now ready, get set at bobqc.net. You read the books, now ready, get set at bobqc.net.